Okay, you all are in for some really good information. This time our topic is all about transportation. Sharon, you want to introduce our guest?
I absolutely do. I love this company. Use them almost all of my weddings. If you need transportation in our area, this is my go-to company for sure. We have Jodie with us today from Xtreme Transportation. So Jodie, just tell us a little bit about yourself and how you came to be part of Xtreme.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me on today, guys. So I work for Xtreme Transportation. We are based out of Southern Indiana, but we do most of our coverage in Louisville, Kentucky. So if you are looking for a venue in Southern Indiana, looking for a venue in Louisville, please hit us up. I've been working for Xtreme now for probably about 7 years. I got to know the owners working at the casino, actually. So always been in that event space and into that hospitality industry. So it translated well going into the limousine realm and transferred well into the event planning space. So happy to be here today to discuss weddings and planning everyone's weddings and giving some tips and tricks for planning your transportation needs.
Well, I'll tell you what, one of the things that really stands out to me about this is, yes, of course, on wedding day, but you could be talking bachelorette, bachelor parties,
absolutely.
Rehearsal dinners, on into the future for other things, could even turn into corporate stuff for their jobs. And when I spoke with Jodie, she immediately said, we could talk about the top tips for transportation. And I think this is one of the topics, Mike, I don't know what you think, that is not really discussed that much. When you're talking about moving a large number of people from one place to another, and Sharon will say, on time, it can be a lot.
It can be a lot. And, we've worked with you all many, many years. And Jenny and Dave, I think they're great people.
Yep.
But I know you all have taken care of so many things, such as even rehearsal dinner, especially if you've got a family from out of town and they're staying in a hotel and you can transfer them from there to the dinner. Also, when it comes to the wedding party the next day. So you've got multiple things that you can help one family with for the whole weekend.
Oh, yeah. And then one thing people don't think a lot about is, to that note, when they come in from the airport. I mean, we do so many airport transfers. We could absolutely pick up all of your guests that are coming in from out of town and get them to where they need to be staying.
Well, and Sharon, I know this has come up on several episodes. When you talk about wedding day, things need to happen on time. And rounding, what do you call it? Herding cats?
Herding cats.
Sometimes herding the wedding party. If they were trying to do that in their own vehicles, getting from one spot to another, parking, getting them in one transportation, bus, car, SUV, whatever that is, it can really take a lot of stress out for the bride and groom, the couple.
Yeah, one of the reasons I'm so glad Jodie's here today is I feel like for a lot of our couples, transportation's an afterthought.
Yes.
I can absolutely attest to that.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times over in our office we receive calls. Like today's Wednesday. On a Wednesday, we'll have a bride call and say, hey, I need to plan my wedding transportation. Okay, when's your wedding? It's Saturday.
Same week.
Tell you, yes, same week. I cannot tell you how many times this happens to us. And I mean, some of these are very nice venues. We had someone call in who's planning a wedding at the Henry Clay, and she's just now thinking of her transportation. And it's just mind-blowing to me that they're waiting so long to think about the transportation.
I think it's so important that they think that through. And as a planner, like logistically, when I do my initial appointment with a bride, I just met with a bride on Monday who's getting married in 2023. She has a Catholic church where she wants to get married, and then the reception, of course, is at a different venue. So instantly my thought is, how am I going to get my bridal party from one to the other? Because I've tried letting them drive separately when I first started, and I'll never forget, I held a reception one time. Introductions into the reception were 35 minutes late because one of the groomsmen who drove separately forgot to buy a card for the couple, so he went to buy a card. So I've got everybody lined up.
Are you saying that's a no-no?
That's a no-no.
And so that's an afterthought that can happen.
My thing as a planner and thinking logistically is I want them corralled. I want to know where they are, and I want to know that they're safe.
Did she say corralled?
Corralled.
Okay.
Yes.
Pretty cats.
Even though my bride's getting married in 23, I told her on Monday night,
Mhm.
we need to make sure that we get transportation booked, at least for your bridal party. So I think that it's just something people don't think about if they don't do weddings every weekend.
And that's the whole reason for this podcast, is starting those conversations, and some things we talk about more than others. But these topics that are so important that there's just not enough information about.
So let's go back for the bride that called you on Wednesday.
Yes.
So you said that happens often.
Very often.
So do you handle that? Do you tell them no? What's the procedures?
It really depends on our capacity. We are always happy to handle it if we are able to, but October was our peak wedding season, and it kind of branched out this year. This year, the wedding season seemed to go
crazy.
on. Yeah, you guys are nodding your heads at me. Yes, wedding season lasted a lot longer this year than it's ever
It's
lasted
been like
before.
350 days.
Yes,
Wedding
yes,
season.
it
Yes.
really has been. So we were just booked to the brim. If we don't have the equipment, if we don't have the drivers, and that's what in the past we would always say, book us at least 6 months ahead. But the way things are going right now, we were just talking, kind of just like, shooting around some things right before we started recording, and we're saying a year.
A year.
Yeah, so we're at a year now. You need to book it out a year before your
and
wedding.
if you're saying that, because our podcast is nationwide. I know we all love Louisville, but our podcast is nationwide, and you guys have one of the biggest fleets
In
I
this
know
area.
in our area for
Mhm.
sure. So if a company like you is filling up and having a hard time, I'm sure a lot of the smaller companies out there are really struggling with those requests.
Absolutely. But I will also say that it's not just a matter of the capacity, but it's the things that the brides don't think about as they're planning this. To your point, corralling everyone. The day of, the whole bridal party's got to get their hair done, got to get their makeup
Right.
done. Most times, you're not doing that on site where the ceremony's going to be
Right.
at. We want to make sure you are all together, and we're going to transport you all
Mhm.
together. So there's a lot of things that people don't think about. And to that note, also, the day of, we do a lot of shuttle services. A lot of people don't
Love
think about that. And in this area, you all know, we have a lot of venues where people are going to park on the other side of the farm to get to the barn to actually attend the ceremony and attend the reception. And we do a lot of shuttle service.
That's
for
a
those
really
types
good
of
point.
things. Yeah, the brides don't think about the guests. You're just going to leave the guests to, walk in their heels and in their dress shoes. And we are like, hey, did you think about this? And again, if you're calling us, a month ahead of time, 3 days ahead of time, we're not able to accommodate you for that. So we really
One
need
of my
to
favorite
plan
ways
early.
to utilize transportation is, I just did a wedding in Lexington last fall, and the hotel was probably 10, 15 minutes from the venue. And we just had 2 buses staged from
Continuous
9
shuttles.
p.m.
Yep.
until 11, and they just made constant
We
loops.
do a lot
So
of that.
anytime a guest wanted to leave, because grandma isn't going to stay as long as
Oh,
the
yeah.
maid of honor. So you want to keep those buses running.
Mhm.
So anytime a guest is ready to depart, they have access to transportation.
Oh yeah, and that works out great with our pricing model because we price hourly. So we say it's, X number of hours minimum, depending on the season, depending on the day, and this is your hourly rate. And you do with our bus, our limo, our SUV as you want during those hours. If you want to take it, just to take you to the venue and it sits there and waits, that's fine, but you're paying the same thing as
Right.
it's shoveling. Like
I
you're
have a
saying.
lot of brides too that they'll get married and then they want to go a couple of places for photos.
Absolutely.
So I
We
think
do it all
that's
the
great to
time.
have because everybody's together. You take that whole bridal party. I even sometimes put the parents on the bus and everybody's together for those photos.
Well, I want to come back around to something. We've talked separately outside the podcast about the staggering statistic going around for 2022. And I know you are going to close your eyes, shake your head, try not to roll your eyes at me again. We talk about that for wedding professionals. And if you're not familiar with the statistics, people out there that's engaged pay close attention because they are talking that there will be an estimated 2.5 million weddings in 2022, which is the most that the U.S. has seen since 1984.
I don't
Now-
know what happened in 1984 to cause that, but I truly believe it's true for 22.
Well, and what we are already hearing from some recent wedding shows is 2023, 2024.
25.
I've
Yes.
said, I really think this is going to be a domino effect in a way. people are not going to be able to get dates or venues. And then 2023 is going to become possibly a bigger year. And it's kind of hard to think about that. Like, how much bigger could this get? There's only so many days and weekends. But what that translates for engaged couples, and I want to make sure, we talk about this, wedding professionals are humans. Like, we have to remember that. And if you think that you can throw your wedding together, and I don't mean that in a bad way, in 3 to 4 months, like a friend did 2 or 3 years ago,
it's not going to happen.
The vendors aren't available. They're already booked.
Yep.
I'm not even talking about your favorite venues, the things that you need to pull together your event. And I consider transportation as one of those really important items.
It's huge.
That means you have to start planning ahead. And I know people are tired of that P word. And we're not saying pivoting, but planning further ahead, because not only your favorite vendors, what if there isn't a photographer available?
The
What about
essential
a florist?
Yeah.
Transportation. And so that's why I was really happy we could have this conversation to start these important topics about transportation and how it can really assist you.
It was so eye-opening even to me, and I think that I'm in the know about the wedding business. But
You're in the know.
I met with a bride on Monday, and she's getting married April of 2023.
So 18 months?
Yeah.
Is that right?
16.
16,
I guess.
okay.
I was her first call. That's exactly how I like it. Thrilled. Sweetest family. She gave me 5 venues she wanted to see. Now, guys, we're talking April of 23.
So that is 16 months.
Of the 5
Oh,
venues I called, 3 of them are already booked for the date she wanted. I mean, it's mind-blowing.
Well, and it's just because everybody is so busy now, and we've got all these COVID brides that held off, and now they're, like you just said, they're jumping to the next year. And I think that's why we have this podcast, for one thing, to educate our couples and families, to let them know you cannot wait around. Just like calling you on a Wednesday to get a limousine on the weekend. That's not going to be possible. And really, in a year from now, it's going to be even less.
Yeah,
You're going to probably laugh at them when they call you.
I'll be calling Xtreme next week. I'll be booking her transportation. I might alter what I book, but I'm going to get her on their book.
Yes.
I mean, and I think that's an important note too. Like, you can maybe change your order, but get on the book. I called Mike on my way home from that meeting, and I said, I don't know what we're going to do. We don't have a dress. We don't have a venue, but put her on your book.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and so I think it's important to come back to say, this is your special day. We're not asking you to cut or recommend that you cut any corners. Definitely not. But in order for you to make those dreams a reality, it's going to take some extra time. It's not because we're saying it. We're not making it happen. Don't shoot the messenger. We're just bringing up the conversation. We want to support and still help these weddings that people want to make a reality. But the reality is you're going to have to allow more time.
Oh, absolutely. Well, and also, I mean, it's not just your special day, it's all the events surrounding your special day.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing that a lot of our brides don't think about. They come back to us down the road. Your bride could book for 2023, but she'll come to us, that spring and say, oh, I need to plan my bachelorette party. He needs to plan his bachelor party. We need to plan the rehearsal dinner. Those are the things that most often people come back to us and they say, oh, I didn't even think about that.
Right.
We want to plan it now. And in the past, sure, we could have accommodated it, but the way things are booking, like you said, things are booking up so crazy for us that we highly, highly encourage that everybody books it together. And if everybody books it together, we're happy to work out some kind of special package pricing for them. The other most common thing that people forget is the getaway car.
Mm-hmm.
How's the bride and groom getting out of there at the end of the night? You're not going to go out of there in the same party bus you came in with your bridal party and with your groomsmen. You want your own car to make your grand exit in.
Right.
Also, mom and dad. A lot of people book a getaway car for mom and dads, for grandmas and grandpas. And again, those are all afterthoughts that people don't think about until it gets down to the wire.
Well, something that just popped in my mind, I don't know if we've talked about this before, but a lot of weddings happen in the evening. Mm-hmm. And when you're fortunate that your grandparents, even older parents, can come and celebrate with you, you want to make sure you get them home safely.
Yes.
You don't want them to think about, oh, I have to leave by 7, because it's starting to get dark. And what you just said made me think about that, is making sure that they have transportation to get safely home and be able to enjoy and take part in your special day.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, something else that brides have got to think about booking you. When you come to the months of March, April, and May, that's the biggest months for proms. So you book up extremely. I know that's a really busy time for you. Plus, you've got Derby in there.
Well, for the Louisville area
people, I mean, there's limousines lined up at the airport, picking people up. So you've got to keep that in mind, and especially when you're picking a date. Think about that. So when you know that you want a limousine and you're getting married in March, April, or May, book it now.
Go ahead and contact us.
Go ahead and contact us.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, okay, so I know we're kind of talking about this through, but Jodie, what are some of the top things that you get asked in regards to transportation?
Can we ride in the Hummer Stretch limousine? I'm telling you that. It drives me mad. Guys, this is in 2008. We have so much better equipment since the 2008 Hummer came out.
And disclaimer, if you like the stretch Hummers out there, Jodie doesn't mean anything by that.
Absolutely. I'm just saying there are much better options, and I want you to come check our fleet out. For the same price, you can get a limo-style bus you can stand up in. It comes equipped with a bar with multiple TVs. Some of them even have bathrooms. And these things are around the same price point, and they can accommodate more folks.
So I'm sorry, Sharon, for anybody that's not local, you also recommend they go out to the transportation places and check out their fleets.
Yes, pick out what you want. If you're planning far enough ahead, you're not going to be limited. You get to come out, you get to see the equipment. We walk brides through all the time and show them our fleet.
That's what I was just getting ready to say. I think one of the best things I've done is I had a bride that wanted to see before she made a decision, and we actually came out. They had the buses all started up. We were able to get on. We looked around, and now when I speak to my clients, I feel more comfortable because I know what I'm talking about.
You've actually seen it, been in it, sat in it.
We recommend that for the bride.
My favorite vehicle of yours is the Mercedes Sprinter bus. I love them. They are perfect for bridal parties.
I agree. Yeah, those usually accommodate about 12 to 14 folks or less. In fact, I recommend you go more spacey, so you do have a little bit of room.
You have to remember the dress. You have to think about the dress.
The dress and all the things that are going to come with the bride.
The bouquets and
they're always toting a lot of things with them. Absolutely.
I can remember being part of some weddings and thinking, how in the world are we getting in that limo with this formal attire on? Forget the person in the dress. I think at one wedding I was in, they had to be lifted up. Now, this has been years ago. There wasn't buses and all that kind of thing. But wow, the convenience and the comfort of not having to worry about it.
And I think that some couples they assume they can't afford transportation.
Yes, that's accurate.
But it's much more affordable when I tell them prices than what they have in their head. It's usually a lot better than what they thought. And I tell you, 1 or 2 times of trying to put a wedding dress in a Volkswagen Jetta, I'm done. I'm out. We're not doing that anymore. It's going to totally.
That's a no for you.
That's a hard no.
Oh, a hard no, Mike. You heard that right.
I have soft nose and hard nose, and that's a hard no. I'm not doing it.
Okay, so being able, I didn't even think about that, but make sure wherever you're located, contact places to see if you can do a walkthrough and see those different vehicles.
Imagine yourself climbing in and out of these vehicles in your gown. Because there are
in your
heels and in your gown. Because it might look great, but it's the functionality there. I always recommend either the Sprinters, the limo style Mercedes Sprinter, or the limo style buses. And actually, I go to a lot of these limo events, limo conventions, and that's the way the entire industry is going. So not just specifically to the Louisville area and to our fleet, but you're not going to see many more of these stretch limousines. Everybody's going towards these buses and these Sprinters because they just make so much more sense for accommodating the party.
So if a couple's calling you and they don't have a planner, what do they need to know before they book the appointment?
To come in and see it?
What do they need to know to book transportation? If they call and they go, I have no idea what I'm doing, but I know I need transportation.
I would just recommend they come in and take a look at everything. Obviously, we want to know their date so we know what's available, but I always recommend come take a look at it. Come see it so you really know what you're looking at. And a lot of times, you come in and you sit in these things and it kind of sparks something like, oh, hey, I am going to book this for a bachelor party or a bachelorette party, because you weren't really thinking about that until you actually sat in it and you saw what these things actually have inside them.
They're amazing.
Yes, they are equipped with bars. You can stock them with liquor. They're equipped with bathrooms. They've got, I call them stability poles. They've got, they've got lights. They've got subwoofers. Yeah. I mean, don't you ever have to go to the bathroom when you're partying?
Especially when you're drinking.
Yeah. I mean, it is a club on wheels.
It is.
So, Jodie,
we're going to need to take our podcast on wheels and give the whole experience here.
Well, that's another topic. We're going to talk about.
Yeah, you go ahead. Mike, you got a good question. Go ahead.
Handicap accessible.
Oh, that is a good question.
Yes, that is a great question. So we actually do have some buses that are handicap accessible. Those are not the typical party buses. We also have a lot of buses that are the forward facing. We call them executive style buses. So for shuttle buses, if your guests are looking to do the shuttles, like you were saying, between, a hotel and a chapel, between the chapel and the reception venue, we can absolutely do accommodations for the handicap.
So how many cars or buses in your fleet do you all have? I know it's grown a lot.
Well, we downsized a little bit during COVID. So pre-COVID, we were just a little over 40. Right now, we're at 39 pieces of equipment. And of those, 4 of them are SUVs. Everything else outside of those 4 so 35 of them are all sprinters, buses, and limos.
And do you see that in the industry? You mentioned that from conventions, a lot of different all over going to that style.
And I think the thing people don't realize is, like, when you go out and buy a car, these things come off a production line. Limousines aren't coming off a production line. There are third-party vendors out there that actually take a car, cut it in half, and they create a limousine out of it.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so all of those town car stretches, all of those Hummer stretches, someone took and cut that in half and created that limousine. So these things are not mass produced. And what we've noticed in the industry is that we're not seeing them produced as much. And what we're seeing is people are taking these Mercedes Sprinters, because that you don't have to cut anything there. I mean, imagine the structural changes that have to happen there. So we're just seeing a lot of the buses and Sprinters are coming out.
So a question for you is, what is... When people are considering, you said you would go leave more room. Mm-hmm. So if you had 12, maybe go to something that holds 15 or 16 people, depending. Okay. So what is another question that you seem like you're asked quite a bit?
Ooh, what are we asked quite a bit? A lot of times that has to do with liquor. So what can we do for liquor? So we do not provide any of the liquor for you. And this varies state by state. But what we do is we say before the day of, drop it off to us. And we will put it on ice for you, and we will have it stocked, and we will have it ready for you.
But that's a question you need to ask a transportation company that you're considering what their policy is.
Something that I do with my couples is I have a huge fear of, like, extremely drunk bridal parties before ceremony. And honestly, when I meet with my clients, most brides and almost every single mother of the bride has that fear that they're going to be drunk before ceremony. So what I like to do is, you guys, when you rent a bus, it comes with the bottled water.
It does.
Ice down bottled water.
It does.
So what I tell my people to do, bring me that cooler. I'll keep it in my car. And during the ceremony, my assistant will switch the bottled water out and put your alcohol on the bus. That way, party it up after the ceremony. But if there are concerns about your bridal party overindulging before ceremony, then we just don't make it available.
Now, this is a prime example of why you need a wedding planner.
This is Mike laughing at
If
me.
you're doing this all yourself and you just come to Xtreme and you're like, hey, I'm going to have this liquor, we're going to stock it for you.
Yeah. Well, that's just a little tip that I've learned along the years is, enjoy the bottled water provided by Xtreme, and then we'll switch it out while you get married.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just as long as Sharon don't get pulled over on the way to the church.
There's a little risk with any business, right?
And so, Xtreme, you service Southern Indiana, Greater Louisville area.
Yes.
Okay. So if you're outside that area, the stuff we're talking about, you ought to write down and ask your
Ask your transportation provider. Absolutely. Ask them. Ask them to come look at their equipment. And again, imagine yourself climbing in and out of there in heels. Maybe wear some heels. Imagine yourself climbing in and out in a dress. Ask them about their alcohol. Ask them about, because a lot of transportation companies out there, I've seen what they will do is they'll transfer you there and then they're going to fill that void with some runs. Does that transportation company stay on site? Because that's one thing we absolutely do.
That
we
literally gives me chest
site.
pain. That we're gonna get done. We're gonna bust out of the church, ready to go,
Yes.
and the bus is gone.
Prom season, we see it so often with other transportation companies, but that is one thing that we always do. We stay on site.
Okay, so for those that might not have understood what she said there, the runs, what you're meaning
Yes.
is you go and you do one job basically, and since there's a window of time, that driver takes that vehicle and goes and does another job.
Yes.
I'm trying to, for those that might not understand what that run is.
But you all do not do that.
Oh, no, absolutely not. We do not do that. We stay there on site. And like I mentioned earlier, we charge you hourly. So during those hours, we are yours. So if you're doing shuttles, we're yours. If you want us to sit there, that's fine.
And
We're
are
gonna
those,
sit there.
a question I have, are those manned the entire time?
Yes, the driver is supposed to stay with the vehicle.
The entire time?
Yes.
Okay. And is there questions about safety or insurance or anything like that that couples should think about or should be asking? I know for you all, we've worked with you and known you all for a long time, but these people could be anywhere in the United States that are listening. So is there anything on that
Oh,
topic?
absolutely. No, I think everybody should ask, what's the driver doing during that time? Where's my vehicle at during that time? You should absolutely ask those questions, because if you do transfer the entire bridal party, and let's say grandma wants to go back to the hotel early, is she going to walk out and there's not going to be a bus there? There's not going to be a limo there? Or is that limo going to be there at your disposal? What are the expectations of that driver during that time? Can that driver take them back? Because a lot of times what we just say is, here is the itinerary given to us, but you are expected to do as directed by that party.
And who's the person in charge?
Yes.
Where do those directions come
Yes.
from if they don't have a wedding planner? Who's the one that can tell that driver? Because you get somebody that's been under the influence of whatever they've enjoyed that evening, their drink of choice, and they just come out and be like, well, I need to go home. Who's the one that is allowed to give those?
Oh, absolutely.
What would you call that? Give
Those directives.
Thank you,
So
directives.
a lot of times we do have a contact person, and in most instances it is the wedding planner. Now, if it's a shuttle situation, that's a very different expectation. But again, we have to set those expectations, and that's part of the conversation that goes into this ahead of time. What are your expectations during this time?
Something else that comes to mind as you're talking from my side is I always like to make a phone call. Like if it's a Saturday wedding, I'll call on Wednesday. And I'll just go over that itinerary. It's down, it's on paper, but just that one last check. So call your transportation company. This is my
call you first.
Right.
We always call ours first.
Right, you do.
Yeah.
Go over the itinerary, and then I always want the cell phone number of the actual driver.
Yes.
Because
Very
you
good
don't want to
tips.
call that transportation company, and they
You
have
mean
it
I
on
can't
call
call
person.
it? You can't just call them at 10
Well,
o'clock at
with
night?
Xtreme you can, because
With
they
other
have it on
companies.
call person. But I want to actually talk to the person in the
Yes.
bus.
Well, and that's one thing we do provide to wedding planners. Specifically, we all, as soon
I
as we
love it.
assign a driver, we give them the cell phone number for the driver, or whoever the point person is, if it's not the direct wedding planner, whoever it
And
is.
then they're
we'll
given my
provide them
number.
that.
And I'll get a text. Hi Sharon, just wanted to let you know I'm out front. We're ready to go.
Yes.
It's so nice.
So you mentioned a minute ago, Christina, insurance.
Mhm.
So, in the past few years, in the headlines, there's been, hate to even talk about it, but limousine full of a wedding party,
Yep.
15 people, and they're on the expressway and it blew up.
Absolutely.
Mike, could you not just said that there was an accident?
I'm just saying, that's exactly what happened.
Okay.
So, that did happen. So, when it comes to that, where does that, is there a contract that they signed tell us a little bit about that.
So always make sure it's a reputable transportation company. There are so many fly-by-night companies out there. Anybody can go out and buy a limousine and get a passenger endorsement and drive it. I could go out and do that today without getting a CDL. I can go get a passenger endorsement, get a limo, and put myself on Craigslist and look it up. So make sure that you are hiring a reputable transportation company.
Do your research.
Yes, please, please, please do your research. Now, a common model that you will see in a lot of cities outside of Louisville is an owner-operator model. So Mike goes out, he buys himself a limousine, but he contracts with a company such as Xtreme Transportation. But he is his own owner of this limousine, and he will drive it based on what Xtreme Transportation has available that evening. If they have a run for him that evening, they'll contact him to do it on their behalf. So that is a common model you will see. And those are the questions you need to ask. You know, is this actually your driver? Is this actually your limousine? If it's not, and just because it's an owner-operator doesn't mean that it's not reputable, most oftentimes that will still fall under that umbrella company, but that's something to think about. You know, oh, okay, so Mike is my limo driver with his limo, and I see that he's not actually part of Xtreme, but is he covered by Xtreme? So ask those things and just make sure it's a reputable company and not some Joe Schmo who's just bought a limo.
That's really important.
Mhm.
And I'm assuming there should be a signed contract.
Yes, and we do sign contracts, so make sure to read through the contract.
Absolutely. Good question,
So
Mike.
if
Great question.
if somebody gets hurt though, does that fall back on your all's insurance from the car, or does that cover the car? I'm just kind of confused
It
how
really
that.
depends on a lot of variables. I can't really give you exactly what would happen. It depends on
The situation.
The situation.
But do you all recommend them to have event insurance? I don't even know if that ties in with
even covers it.
transportation.
No, that's not anything we've ever recommended to our passengers. No.
Okay.
I've actually had to ask that question, and then insurance doesn't.
That
touch
is
transportation.
specific for the event.
So
Yes.
so let's go back just so we're clear. There is nothing that we have to provide as insurance to be a passenger in your vehicle.
Oh no, the passengers
see what
don't
you're
need to
asking.
provide anything.
Yeah, I'm just saying
Okay.
if
Okay.
we've got a wedding party and we're in a car accident and two of my bridesmaids were put in the hospital.
Mhm.
Do you cover that, or does that fall back under theirs?
Again, it depends on the
Again,
situation.
yes,
I
it
know.
depends.
You see what I'm saying, though? That
Yeah, I get where you're going with it, but it really depends on the situation, and I can't give you an answer here
Yeah.
and be held
Okay.
to that answer
Okay.
because it is case by case.
yeah, okay.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Sharon.
Since we're talking about safety, one of the things that I know I've been asked, especially by the parents of the couple, is let's talk about the drivers. We've talked so much about the vehicles, but the drivers, I mean, you're putting usually fairly young adults,
Mm-hmm.
usually drinking, on a bus, and this person is responsible for their safety. So how are your drivers vetted? How do we know that we're choosing a company that is going to put our safety first as far as the personnel in the vehicle?
Ooh, good
Oh,
question,
no,
Sharon.
that is a great question. No. So actually, most of our drivers are very seasoned drivers, and they've been with us for quite some time. Our most common source of drivers, believe it or not, is school bus drivers. If you can handle a school bus full of children, I think you're going to be just fine with some drunk adults. But that is our most common source of driver because they come with the CDL, they come with the passenger endorsement, they come with the school bus experience.
They're
But
used to loud,
they're
noisy,
used to
not
loud-
letting it
Yeah,
distract
they're used
them.
to chaos. Absolutely. But we do put all of our drivers through a driver test. And just due to FMCSA regulations, we do background checks on everybody. We do a drug screen on everybody. We run their motor vehicle report, and we have certain standards that our safety
I
department
think that's
abides
so
by.
important for people to
It
ask.
is. It absolutely is. And our company has the luxury of being under the umbrella of a transportation company. Our parent company is a trucking company with over 150 CDLA drivers. So our safety department vets all of these people
Love it.
for us.
But those are questions that people need to ask, especially if if you're not used transportation. This could be the first time that they are getting a limo or a party
And
bus.
I mean, I've ridden on those buses with bridal parties, and I'll be the first one to tell you I could not drive. I could not drive in that situation.
Well, now that's a topic for another
They're
day
loud.
about Sharon's driving.
They're loud.
She can't drive a car with 2 people in
Oh,
it.
hush it.
I'm driving myself to your shop because last year, whew, we took a wrong turn. We were in the city we're from.
They're loud. They're singing. I mean, it gets rowdy on there.
Oh, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, we got
You have a driver,
TVs.
you have a driver, Mr. Greg, and I would pay for Mr. Greg just to drive me around to hang out with him. He treats
Is
brides.
that Greg that used to be a DJ?
Is that Greg Richendollar?
Yeah.
He used to be a
Yeah.
he used to be a
Yes,
DJ.
he was a DJ.
Yes, Greg
Yes.
Gosh, he's
Greg.
still with you. I know who that is.
He is still with us. Yes.
That's
Greg is
incredible.
great. So Greg
Yes.
works for our parent company.
Yeah.
So
I think it's great though to have drivers that not only can be safe in those situations, but they
That are not Sharon. I'm
they're-
gonna summarize.
no, I can do it. But they're also fun. They're fun and they
enjoy what they
the bridal
do.
party.
Yes. And that's something too, when you go out to check out the fleets that these companies have, you can ask these questions about your drivers. And I do know that that's one thing that stands out about Xtreme. A lot of the drivers have been there a number of years, have done all types of events.
they're familiar
And-
with the venues.
And when you go check out those vehicles, another thing that we haven't talked about is I almost always put a photographer on the bus. You know, there's almost always so when you get on that bus, you picture those photos and the lights in the ceiling, and yeah, it's just a good time.
Well, and to your point, make sure you accommodate for space.
Right.
Like I said, make it spacious. Make sure you got enough space to accommodate the photographer,
And the dress,
florals,
always
the
the
dress.
dress.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mike, I got a side note here. We have got to do a GoPro with Sharon trying to drive like a school bus or
Nope.
something with
Not
some loud
happening.
music. Like,
Hard no.
I could just, oh, goodness gracious.
I just feel so. I feel bad for him because it is nuts.
I wouldn't even get in her Jetto doing that.
I have a hard no about getting in the Jetta now.
Oh boy.
So, but Jodie, this is exactly why I was excited. I know the two of you all were as well, because things that we've talked about, probably half of these things hadn't even crossed my mind. And I've been in several different limos at several different types of events. And a lot of our listeners, if it's parents listening, they may have not been through this for 20 or 30 years. Or the brides or the couples listening, they might not have done this for their prom or something. So this could be completely new for them. And that's why I thought this would be great information to share out
Is
there.
there anything that we should have asked you that we didn't?
I mean, if I'm going to give any words of advice, limousines, buses, they are not endless, bottomless. The drivers are not bottomless. So plan ahead. If you're going to be booking, absolutely book out ahead of time. Plan so that you can come and see the equipment. Pick out what you want so we can put it on for you, and so that it's not, the last bus that's available. Pick out what you want. Come see it. It's not an endless supply of limousines, and people seem to think that's the case. That we're not an Uber. We're not Uber. We are a professional transportation provider with vetted drivers and with high dollar equipment. So please plan ahead of time.
And this is something to actually make a decision on.
Yes.
Back in the day, it was, I need an 8-passenger limo or a 12-passenger limo. It has changed so much. It's evolved. It really has.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Xtreme because I've been working with them for over 20 years. And I used to be on the board of Hats for Hope for breast cancer.
Yeah.
And every year, Jenny donated a limousine.
Yes.
Well, really not a limousine, a bus to transport our guests from point A to point B.
That's awesome.
So thank you all so much for that. That was amazing.
They're an amazing company. It's honestly, in 7 years, I've done one wedding where I didn't use Xtreme. And it was only because Xtreme told me they wouldn't go that far.
Mm-hmm.
It was out of town. And I was a nervous wreck because I am so spoiled by Xtreme. They are just the best of the best at what they do.
Well, we appreciate that, guys. We really appreciate that. And, we spent this entire time talking about limousines, talking about buses. We got SUVs too. I mean, we'll move anything from one person to as many as you want. We have buses that accommodate 48 people, but we got multiple buses. So if you do need to move 300 people,
Yeah, I've had to do that before.
I know you have. We can absolutely make it work.
The other thing you just mentioned about SUVs, what a great thing to do for your anniversary. No matter how many years it's been, where you don't have to worry about calling an Uber, or if you're going to go to a couple of places, things like that.
Well, I tell you, when Pam and I were married 25 years, it's been 6 years ago now. Xtreme sent a limousine over, picked us up,
Nice.
and treated us like we were king and queen. I mean, it was
I think
amazing.
everyone should experience
Yeah, it was
that.
amazing.
Could you call Ron Ramsey?
I know, I'm thinking, I'm
tell
going
him that we need to be doing that.
Sharon, I don't know about you, but this, at least in the clip of this, I'm gonna make sure Josh hears somehow, right? Jodie, thank you so much for your time, but
Thank you for having me.
your insight and questions that people should ask, no matter if they're here or wherever you're listening from, we greatly appreciate that.
Oh, I appreciate you guys having me on.
Thank you for
Thank
coming.
you.
So to connect with Xtreme, all of the information will be in the notes from the podcast, links to their website. Make sure you go find them on social media. If you're not here locally and you do make the trip to Louisville, Kentucky or the surrounding areas, you will know someone you can use for transportation.
Absolutely. We'll get you from the airport to wherever you need to go.
Absolutely.
That's awesome.
Thank you so much. Okay, everyone, thank you for tuning in. Until next time, if you've liked what you heard, make sure that you go and
Leave a glowing 5-star review.
make sure you follow us on social media. Until next time, see ya.